Hi everyone, hope you are all well. On behalf of the Glaze, we extend a special welcome to you to join Sharing Global Views. In each episode of Sharing Global Views, we meet, learn, and share thoughts with experts and leaders on different global matters. And the show is part of Sharing Economy Initiative, which aims to make the world a better and more sustainable place little by little. So far, we've invited some remarkable speakers. They are explorers, doctors, activists, entrepreneurs and leaders who have made a serious breakthroughs that are changing every aspect of our lives. If you know more about us, we'll share our social media page later. So Godfrey, what's new?
Hi, Helena. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. For everyone in this side of the world, in the Americas, you may be having your morning tea or coffee. In the African and European continent, having their lunch tea or coffee. And in the East Asian countries, having your after dinner tea. We've had a few occasions to meet at this tea talk. And this program is for global opinion leaders, young professionals, postgraduates, undergraduates, and anyone to exchange their ideas and perspectives on how the sharing economy works and could help the rest of the world business from their own perspective and their own achievements. Last time, our topic was the tridial house, a sharing economy practice that could help solve the urban slum poverty problem. Today, we're here to talk about something even more sophisticated. We're talking about hydrogen and the future of energy. Please allow me to introduce our host and standing chair of the Glaze and former president of Costa Rica, Mr. Jose Maria Figueres, to introduce Glaze and our main speaker today.
Thank you, Elena, and thank you, Godfrey, and thank you all for joining us in this new edition of Sharing Global Views. GLAZE, the Global Alliance for the Sharing Economy, is a nonprofit, non-political organization which seeks to promote the benefits of a sharing economy through commerce, entrepreneurship, and cross-border trade. Our series, The Global Sharing Views, is a set of conversations that we have every other Wednesday, where we like to showcase leaders and entrepreneurs in their very particular fields. And today it is a very, very, very special honor to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Franklin Chang Díaz, the chairman and CEO of Ad Astra rocket. Dr. Chang is a citizen of both Costa Rica, our country, and of the United States of America. He is the chairman and CEO, as I have already mentioned, of Ad Astra Rocket Company, a US firm that is developing advanced plasma rocket technology and applications in sustainable energy with operations in Webster, Texas, and Guanacaste, Costa Rica. Franklin founded Ad Astra back in 2005 after a 25-year career as a NASA astronaut, a veteran of 7 space missions. Imagine that, 7 space missions. He has logged over 1,600 hours in space, including 19 hours in 3 spacewalks. In 1994, in conjunction with astronaut training at NASA, he founded and directed the Advanced Space Propulsion Laboratory at the Johnson Space Center to develop the physics of the VASIMR rocket engine. Dr. Chang holds a PhD degree in applied plasma physics from MIT and a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from the University of Connecticut. He is an adjunct professor of physics at Rice University and at the University of Houston. But above all, he is a friend of development, and I would say one of the most forward thought leaders with respect to hydrogen and the future of energy. He has been actively promoting this as a hydrogen roadmap in the country of Costa Rica, which of course can be extrapolated to other countries around the world. And it is my privilege again to leave us all in the hands of Franklin. Franklin, thank you for joining us on this Sharing Global Views session. And we're delighted to have you with us and to learn about hydrogen and the future of energy.
Thank you very much, Don Jose Maria. It's a pleasure to be here, and greetings from Texas, Space City. We're just about 5 miles away from the Johnson Space Center, where astronauts train and get ready to go where no one has gone before. So, so it is a pleasure. But today we're going to talk about things that have to do more with Earth. In reality, to tell you the journey that we've had in this little country of Costa Rica, which, as Don Jose Maria pointed out, could be the journey of many other countries. And we hope to show that and demonstrate how Costa Rica's example could be replicated worldwide. So let me proceed and share my screen so that I can give you a few slides. Starting with, let me just to illustrate or to explain what is it that the hydrogen, what is hydrogen all about? And we talk about the hydrogen cycle. And you can see here in this cartoon in the bottom of the slide, sort of the process. You begin with electricity. And the electricity, we want it to be renewable. We want it to be green electricity. And water, which we have plenty here on this planet. And we combine the two in a device called an electrolyzer. And what this does is just basically breaks up the water molecule into its components, oxygen and hydrogen. We choose to collect or store the hydrogen. We could also collect the oxygen as well. It's another important product. And the hydrogen economy really becomes also the oxygen economy. But we won't talk about this today. We'll look at just the hydrogen, collect the hydrogen, and we store it. And we typically store it in high pressure tanks. Hydrogen is a gas. It's a very low density gas, so we have to compress it to high pressure. And then when we're ready to use it, we simply feed it to a device called a fuel cell. And the hydrogen then enters the fuel cell and combines with oxygen from the air, which of course is everywhere, and gives you back electricity and the water. So whatever you started out with, you get the return. So the electricity that you get is not quite the same amount of electricity that you put in, because there are inefficiencies in the process, but it is still about 50% in approaching 70% efficient. So it's pretty nice. So this is the fundamental carbon-free energy process where you can store energy from the sun, the wind, and then deliver it to a user as you need it. And the point here is that this combination of the fuel cell and the hydrogen storage tank weighs less and can be charged much faster than any battery. So this is a very important thing to keep in mind. So how does the fuel cell work? I mean, it is an electrochemical device. It combines essentially in a no moving parts structure two elements, the hydrogen from one side and the oxygen coming from the air. And the two combine and there is a sort of a sandwich of fairly exotic components. These are plates that are plated with platinum, so it includes some of the expense that has to be understood in the construction of these devices. And the sort of sandwiched material is a proton exchange membrane. It's a very exotic membrane that that prevents certain particles from passing through, but only lets the others go. So the combination of the two produces electricity and, of course, water. The device is packed into a structure which is relatively small, and you can make them in different sizes for different power levels. Again, no moving parts. It generates electricity and pure water. Now, this is technology that came from the space program. And so the journey to the hydrogen economy really begins or goes through space. It was the power source for the Gemini and Apollo spacecraft in the 1960s, and of course the space shuttles through the 80s and 2000s. Here's one of those fuel cells. In my journeys in space, we operated the shuttle. The shuttle had 3 fuel cells. We carried oxygen and hydrogen in tanks. And this is how we made our electricity. We had plenty of electricity in the spacecraft for many days. And of course, we also produce water, and that is the water we drank. So it is very important to understand the whole process produces not just the oxygen, but also the clean water that is also needed in the planet, in our planet. So what is the situation in Costa Rica? Here's Costa Rica's energy opportunity. Costa Rica, just like many other countries in Central America, it's a small country, 5 million people, 50,000 square kilometers. It consumes a total of about 130,000 terajoules of energy per year. Most of that energy is not electricity, but about 30% of that, about 30,000 terajoules of that energy is electric. Now, Costa Rica does have the benefit that it has good natural resources in terms of water and hydroelectric power, sun, wind. And so, electricity, the grid in Costa Rica is quite clean. However, that is not the case when we talk about transportation. So the vehicles, the cars, the trucks, all of the moving vehicles on our roads in Costa Rica consume hydrocarbons, imported oil, which is very expensive for us and of course contaminates the environment. So we would like to change those 100,000 terajoules of energy that is consumed in the form of imported hydrocarbons with locally produced hydrogen, if that were possible. We looked at the Costa Rica's resources in solar and wind, and we find that it does have enough. So Costa Rica has about 3 times what it needs to satisfy that requirement. So on that basis, we are proceeding then to move Costa Rica to a hydrogen economy. And we have been doing this as part of our activities of our company. Ad Astra Rocket Company has a small operation in Costa Rica, and we have been involved in the development of hydrogen ever since 2011. And of course, we focus on green hydrogen. Green hydrogen is the one that I described to you, proceeding from water, electrolysis. But hydrogen in the world is mostly produced from natural gas. We would like to change that. We would like to go to 100% renewable energy. Costa Rica's subsidiary is operating since 2015 as 100% solar. We have a solar farm next to our building. You can see it right here. It's relatively small, produces only about 80 kilowatts at peak power. But we have plenty of sun. And so over the course of the year, we generate enough electricity to support the operations of the laboratory and then have even excess energy, which we now turn into hydrogen. The hydrogen then is stored in a plant, which is partially located right here. You can see this is a fairly old picture now. And then the hydrogen is dispensed through a dispenser to a vehicle, and we have deployed a urban fuel cell electric bus, which is operating in the city of Liberia. And more recently, we have automobiles that are now working in the, in the province of Guanacaste. So In doing so, we have become leaders in the region. You can see this little dot, this little blue dot right here, that's us. And we are part of a growing array of hydrogen stations worldwide. You can see Western Europe and of course China, India, China and Japan are moving quickly into the hydrogen economy, as other countries as well in the Pacific and in the Southern Hemisphere, Australia, New Zealand, and of course we are the sort of the players. And this is the map as it stood this year. We keep track of all of this, and we expect to see this population of blue dots increasing over time. So the plant initially started as a storage of low pressure, relatively low pressure hydrogen, 350 bar or 350 atmospheres, to dispense the hydrogen onto the bus. But more recently, we have began, or in fact almost completed, the expansion of the plant to much higher pressures, 1,000 atmospheres, with an expansion tank which almost doubles our capacity, and pre-chilling capability to a dispenser, which is what we call an H70 protocol. This dispenser allows us to refuel sedans, vehicles, small, in about 3 to 5 minutes. So we can fill up your car in about 3 to 5 minutes, and we deliver about 5 kilos of hydrogen to the vehicle. The vehicle then has a range of about 550 kilometers. So it's a very nice setup. You don't have to wait a long time to charge your batteries. You don't have to trickle charge for a long time. It is almost the experience of having a gasoline sedan. The plant has more or less this feature, this geometry. It's a 3D geometry here. We have the storage of hydrogen that is produced in this area, and the tanks here are protected from the sun. The control area. We have this new type of modularized container, which are now we produce this in our company, and it is perfect for deploying the hydrogen capability and just about anywhere in the world. So we now have a second dispenser, which is the H70 dispenser, so we'll be able to fuel both vehicles. You can see some of the hardware here. And in transit to Costa Rica, everything is now on site. The engineering and all of the drawings have been completed. All the fabrication has been completed. Construction permits have been completed. We're 95% done with the project. We're going to be installing the chiller now, and we will be commissioning this expanded plant in the early part of 2021, probably in the January timeframe. We have done this as a partnership. This is not an activity of only our company, but we managed to bring together a number of partners that represent basically the private and the public sector and some foundations. And the Inter-American Development Bank. So you see the government of Costa Rica has had a little part of it. Our company is leading the effort. International companies such as Air Liquide and Cummins are involved, and the foundations, CRUSA, and Toyota Mobility Foundation, the Inter-American Development Bank, and then a local Costa Rican company that is the representatives of Toyota Motor in the country, and a service a company that provides transportation services. So you can see that we're trying to do this as a combination of public-private partnership. So you see, this is what the future brings, a growing hydrogen demand in the region. We see that more active infrastructure projects are growing in both in Costa Rica. We have now completed a project in Colombia. We're looking at a new project in Belize, projects that are developing in Chile, also India and the Middle East are coming online. And now I wanted to point out that these transportation applications are relevant to all types of transportation, including maritime, rail, and also, of course, space. So in summary, hydrogen is poised to become a major decarbonization energy vector worldwide. I don't see any plausible way in which we can accomplish decarbonization of the energy in the planet without the inclusion of hydrogen. The important thing here is that the economy of scale is that the most important now is to move things to a large scale so that we can reduce cost. And I think this was the last slide that I had for you, and I'm happy to entertain any questions you may have. And thank you so much for your attention.
Franklin, thank you so much for an extraordinary presentation in terms of presenting what undoubtedly is something full of technology in very simple and understandable terms. Friends, I have to share with you that Franklin is a national hero in Costa Rica, as you can well imagine. Everybody in Costa Rica knows him. When they see him on the streets, everybody wants to take a picture with Franklin. Everybody wants to share some words with Franklin. He is a true icon. And again, Franklin, thank you so much for being with us on this Sharing Global Views program. Friends, may I also encourage you to send in your questions via the chat or on the LinkedIn page of Glaze. That's G-L-A-S-E, Glaze. So Franklin, if I may open up with a couple of questions, please. First of all, the issue of safety. Supposing I'm driving in one of these hydrogen cars and I get hit by a tractor trailer in the back where I have the tank of hydrogen, what happens to me?
Most likely nothing, unless, of course, you don't have your seatbelt on, and then maybe you get blown through the through the windshield. But no, I'm seriously. I mean, there has been a tremendous amount of safety assessment of hydrogen over the years. The vehicles that are being produced now have gone through tremendous safety protocols. Typically, what happens when a hydrogen tank gets punctured is that the hydrogen that escapes, it is so volatile that it does not hang around very much. So there is danger, of course. Hydrogen is an explosive fuel, just like gasoline and diesel. But the hydrogen is volatile and moves out quickly. It's different from if you get hit in a car and your gasoline tank ruptures, then you have gasoline spill on the road and fumes that linger in the vicinity of the vehicle, and that can cause a fire. So typically you don't see those kinds of things on hydrogen, but that is not to say that it's no danger. It's just a different type of danger, and we have to be prepared for that.
Thank you, Franklin. Now, you mentioned the project in Costa Rica where you're working on, but you also mentioned projects in other countries of Latin America, and even in the Middle East where you're active. In your experience, Franklin, for countries that want to go down the road of hydrogen, as you have mentioned here, which is so promising towards the future, what do you consider are the main barriers of entry?
Well, the main barriers, there's a lot of misinformation about hydrogen. A lot of people worry about its safety, which is something that needs to be addressed. So I think communication, I think education, just getting people to know what this is about is one of the barriers that needs to be overcome. I think hydrogen needs to be deployed in small pilot projects so that people get used to them, get used to working around hydrogen. One of the problems that we see in the commercial deployment of hydrogen is the cost of electricity, because of course you need to use electricity, and if the electricity cost is very high, then it doesn't work. The other point is if the price of gasoline or diesel is very low, as it is here in Texas, for example, then is not commercially viable. So we have to look at all those things. In Costa Rica, of course, the price of electricity is high, but that is not necessarily the case if you produce your own electricity, which is what we do in our case. So when you have your own solar farm, you bypass all of the levies, tax levies that have to be involved in the production of electricity, and you produce your own electricity. As long as your electricity is less than 5 cents per kilowatt hour, then you're good. If it gets above that, it begins to be questionable. So price of electricity, very important.
Thank you, Franklin. There's a question on the chat from TU, and he asks, Franklin, if there are barriers in terms of intellectual property. Is there intellectual property that is attached to any one of the components of the production of hydrogen that you mentioned that would be a barrier of entry for developing nations?
Not really. There is no major barrier in terms of intellectual property. The components are being built by companies worldwide. I mean, the hydrogen economy, it has already taken hold, and it is a reality in many countries. Many companies produce fuel cells, they produce electrolyzers, they produce tanks, compressors, valves, piping. What we do have in Costa Rica, which is sort of intellectual property unique to us, is the software that marries all these pieces together. And this is important because when you deploy hydrogen, you really are deploying an ecosystem. You're deploying the solar, the wind, the storage, the dispensing, and all of these pieces have to be talking to one another correctly. That requires software. And we have developed quite a bit of that in our system.
Thank you, Frankie. There's another question here in the chat that mentions the economies of scale. It's a question about the economies of scale that you mentioned. Where do you see the hydrogen development today on the curve of economies of scale to bring costs down?
Yes. Important to have hydrogen not in the hundreds, but in the thousands. And if we're talking about filling stations. Right now in California, for example, there are 60 filling stations. In the same thing in Germany. Germany has about 60 filling stations. And we want to go to thousands of filling stations worldwide. We also want to produce large quantities of hydrogen to reduce the cost per kilogram. Electrolyzers, when you are going to buy an electrolyzer to make hydrogen from water, it costs you typically about $1 a watt. Okay, this is sort of the number that you have to keep in mind. Anything above that is not so good. You want to bring costs down below $1 per watt, which is roughly the cost that it today for installation of solar and wind turbines in the market. So numbers like this are important to keep in mind. But as you make more, of course, the prices will go down.
Thank you. Godfrey?
Yes, well, I personally have a lot of questions myself. Excellent presentation, Mr. Chang. I was wondering about the scalability. You did mention a lot of, you did mention safety and infrastructure. So how far away do you envision a global hydrogen ecosystem?
I don't think it's very far away. In fact, some countries have already moved, they've already made the decision to move to the hydrogen economy. Japan is one of them. I think there's a very strong incentive government-wise in China. I think countries like Germany. Germany just announced a major hydrogen plan for green hydrogen, which to the tune of 9 billion euros over 4 years. Same thing with the European community. They've announced their plans, and Chile just announced his hydrogen plan. Costa Rica has its own. So lots of movements now in that direction, and the scalability is very important. So I think what we're seeing is the beginnings of a fairly large wave that is forming to deploy hydrogen all over the world. I think it's important to understand that the developing countries also have a great opportunity. And as I mentioned earlier in my talk, the hydrogen economy is not just the hydrogen economy, it's the oxygen economy, and it's also the water economy. Because when you produce hydrogen, you produce oxygen. And when you consume hydrogen, you produce pure water. All of these things are important in our ecosystem.
Godfrey, let me hold your question, if I may, Godfrey, for a minute. Let me turn to a question here on the chat. We have Carlos de Paco. Coming in, Carlos.
Yes, good morning, Franklin. Thanks very much for the presentation. I was wondering, as you have moved forward and you've mentioned the efforts that have been occurring in Costa Rica and that has been pioneering the electric mobility through hydrogen if I understood correctly, in the global south, as you showed that map before in your presentation. What have been the obstacles that you see, and also the opportunities, not only to replicate, but once we replicate in other countries, in Latin America, in Africa, Southeast Asia, based on the model that you have developed and the proof of concept that is occurring right now in Costa Rica, that we could expand. I understand you have been also in contact with some African projects that are interested in following the example and the project in Costa Rica. So the scaling and the replication of the project, what are the main obstacles? And also, since you mentioned IDB in your project, which is one of the sponsors, where do you see the multilaterals in this moment getting involved in on a project similar to the one in Costa Rica? That would be the Asian Development Bank, the Africa Development Bank, the World Bank, Eastern Europe Development Bank, as IDB has been doing in Latin America. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. I think one of the main obstacles that I have detected certainly in our part of the world is a tremendous unawareness of what hydrogen is or what the hydrogen economy entails. Most people, when you talk to them about an electric vehicle, they think about a battery vehicle. And it turns out that hydrogen vehicles are also electric vehicles. They just have a different type of energy storage than battery vehicles. But most people do not understand what a hydrogen vehicle, how does it work? How does a fuel cell work? This technology has not penetrated the situational awareness of our government in the global south. And I think a tremendous impediment to deployment is that of education and outreach to the leaders of these nations. The other one is, of course, cost. People compare the cost of hydrogen with the cost of diesel, and it is kind of an unfair comparison, because when you look at the price of diesel compared to the price of a kilogram of hydrogen, you're not really comparing the price, or let me say, you're not really comparing the cost, because the cost of diesel hides away the cost in public health, the cost in ecological damage that we're doing to the environment. And if you were to include that cost in the actual price of the gallon or the liter of diesel or gasoline, you will find that hydrogen is a lot cheaper. But these kinds of mathematics are not really, part of our daily life or the daily understanding in terms of the deliveries of our leaders. So we have to reach out to them and make them understand that this is a much better approach. I keep saying that for thousands of years, we have seen or looked at our environment as a bottomless pit. And our humans have just been used to dump all of our waste into what we call a bottomless pit, the environment. Well, it has reached the point where it's not a bottomless pit anymore. It's now overflowing, and now we have to deal with our own waste. It's time to pay attention to this.
Absolutely. And thank you for bringing that point up, Franklin, because as we go forward in this decade, we have to half our carbon emissions. And hydrogen can be a tremendous contributor to being able to get that done in order to stabilize the climate on the planet, as is our responsibility to do so. Godfrey, back to you.
Well, yeah, you answered many of my questions already in the previous question. I do have one comment to add, and then wanted to ask you something outside of the topic. Comment to add is, I've read that as just if we want to compare with traditional fuel options, other options have also undergone their investment cycles, their research cycles, and also safety-wise, they've improved over the time as they've managed to stabilize the fuel options. So I definitely see hydrogen being the option for now to be on the spotlight. But I can't help but look at the rocket behind you right now, and I'm getting outside of topic now. How do we transition from this to that?
Well,
and you may do the explaining, I guess. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. It's funny, Godfrey, but our company has an ulterior motive for moving into the hydrogen space, and that is that to me, eventually humans will be living on the moon and living on Mars, and we are certainly going to need excavators and trucks and all kinds of equipment there, and we certainly are not going to use diesel or natural gas because there won't be any. And we will be using fuel cell electric vehicles operated with water, which we will find on the moon and on Mars, and plenty of solar energy, which we find on the moon. And so to me, the hydrogen economy will be transferable to space in a very natural way. I think it maybe already is. So you can see how the two things are connected. Now, right now, we don't talk about that very much because people get confused that we're doing something for the future of space and what is the importance of today for Earth. So we focus on what the needs are here on our planet. But they're very much connected.
Thank you, Franklin. Elena?
Yeah, Dr. Franklin, actually, I have one question. Can we make enough renewable energy to supply the world and replace fossil fuel? And how can the hydrogen economy form the future? That's my question. Thank you.
I think the answer is yes. I think in reality, we are already doing that because all the energy that we consume on this planet comes from the sun, pretty much all of it. If you look at hydroelectric power, that is really solar power because this is the sun that has evaporated the water from the ocean that has caused the rain that has gone into a dam, and that eventually becomes hydroelectric power that we can use. There's also the sun is what, of course, powers solar panels. The sun is also what causes the wind. And so wind turbines are really a form of solar power. Even oil, even petroleum is a form of stored energy from the sun. which was, created, millions of years ago when the Earth was covered by vegetation. That vegetation was created by the sunlight, and eventually that vegetation became petrified and became petroleum. So again, that is stored solar energy. So in the end, all of our energy is coming from the sun. Maybe the only portion of of energy that's not solar energy is geothermal energy, which is most likely nuclear power. Geothermal comes from the radioactive disintegration of components in the core of the Earth, and that produces heat, and that is what causes our volcanoes and so on. So, but in reality, most of the energy on the planet right now is solar energy. So we are pretty much full of energy. We just have to learn to use it.
Franklin, thank you so much. I think we're coming to the end of our questions, Franklin, and to the end of our program as well. Are there any closing comments, Franklin, that you would like to offer us as we march into the world charged up by the hydrogen economy?
Well, one thing that I always say is that the world has changed so much from the time, I came to the United States, 50 years ago. We now have the ability to communicate very effectively, and we are doing so right now. And so information is available in all corners of the planet. So R&D, technology, advanced technology is something that any country and every country has the capability to do. And all they need as a natural resource is brain power. And brain power is something that we all have. So this is a good news. This means that there are not going to be monopolies of knowledge that are concentrated in certain parts of the world. We have the opportunity to have knowledge spread out and include all the countries of the world in this new adventure. So I have tremendous optimism for the future.
Dr. Franklin Chang Díaz, national hero in Costa Rica, thought leader of the hydrogen economy, and entrepreneur at Ad Astra, thank you very much for having joined us today. And thank all of you, friends, for having engaged in this conversation. 2 weeks from today, on the 2nd of Wednesday, we will have with us Prime Minister Enrique Letta of Italy and Prime Minister George Papandreou of Greece, talking about the future of education. For now, this is all. Thank you, Franklin, and go well and enjoy. Bye-bye.